Hey, it's Glenn Evans from ChurchSecurityAlliance.com, and today I have the privilege of interviewing Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Dave is the author of two books, actually three now. The first being On Killing, the second being On Combat, and then the third is a new children's book called Sheepdogs. And it's a very great privilege for me because I've been a fan for probably my whole career, 20 years or so. Where he's had a great impact on my life, my view, and helping me understand who I am. And so today I want to share this interview with you. And what it covers, it's about the Sheepdog Seminar for Churches that he's going to be holding at the end of April. I believe it's April 25 and 26, the Friday night, or actually all day Friday and all day Saturday. And where he's going to discuss this important topic of church security. Now, if you've never heard him speak, it's a real great experience for you. And if you're in the area of Virginia Beach or an hour or two away, I think it would be well worth your time to try to attend this event because there's going to be a lot of people there in the church security community. But also we're going to get an opportunity to listen to Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. So enjoy the interview as we talk about this topic about being a sheepdog. So we're talking about the topic of church security, and a lot of times when I mention this topic to pastors or even laymen, I get a kind of a weird look. They kind of cock their head and they're thinking about it because it's kind of an oxymoron in some minds where church and security aren't supposed to go together. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, Glenn, I can't find a single case in the last 100 years of somebody in a church in America during a worship service killed by fire. Your church has got a fire exit, a fire alarm, and fire extinguisher, and they should. But we haven't had a single person killed by church fire that I can find in 100 years. How many people killed by church violence? 20 odd a year. You had the parking lot, the number pretty much doubles. That divorced husband, that boyfriend with a restraining order, they know the one place to go every week to find the victim is the parking lot of the house of worship. If your house of worship can have a fire extinguisher and a fire exit, and they should, how much more so should you prepare for violence, which is literally hundreds of times more likely to kill the individuals in that church than fire? I tell my cops and I tell others, if you love the people you worship with, you'll be ready to protect them in their hour of need. And we're calling people to be what we call sheepdogs. The sheepdog answers to the great shepherd and protects the flock. One day we'll rest at the feet of the shepherd, and we yearn to hear those words, "Well done, O good and faithful servant." But right now our job is to protect our flock. And the threat to our churches is greater than ever. Just as we've begun to protect our schools, we need to protect our churches. I live in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and we had the Jonesboro massacre in my son's school. A few years later, we moved to Mascoutah, Illinois. Right up the street, just a couple of years ago, a Baptist pastor was murdered. Just 10 miles up the road, was murdered here in Illinois in front of his congregation. I tell you, we are negligent if we don't have fire exits and a fire extinguisher. We are even more negligent. And we have failed in our responsibility to God to protect our flock if we do not prepare for the possibility of violence. So we're the sheepdogs. We prepare for violence. We brought together an awesome team of individuals who train about the school, about the threat to our churches. And by the way, when we talk about school threats, the church schools are also places, and the daycare centers are places where the potential for violence is very real. And we outline the threat. We outline the simple, straightforward things that we can do to prepare for it. But first and foremost is to strip away denial. We are negligent if we do not prepare for the possibility of violence. And when we do that, we see many benefits flowing from the process.
One of the, I know that you're going to be speaking at the Sheepdog Conference for churches out in Virginia Beach. I believe it's April 25th and 26th, and my intention is to be there. So we understand that there are threats. Anybody who pays attention to the news knows that there are weekly, I send out notices to my membership letting them know about violence that occurs, whether it's in campus, in the building, on the parking lot, or outside the church. It's happening every single week. So with that in mind, what are some of the specific things that you're going to be talking about? And if you would, you've talked about preparation, but how important is it to train for situations like this?
Yeah. You do not respond to something like this out of the blue. The more preparation, the more teams you have in place. Armed security is a piece of the equation, and we're increasingly bringing our cops on board, members of our congregation who are police. But we've got to have planning. We've got to have a process. We have to have reporting. There could be other emergencies. There could be somebody having a heart attack. You could have individuals who are threatening the children in the daycare center. And how do we properly vet those individuals to make sure that our child care is and those precious little lambs are safe? So the first day we've got a variety of different experts that tell you the background on church, the response dynamics, the training dynamics. Then the second day is my presentation on the Bulletproof Mind. We're living in stunningly, frighteningly violent times. The murder rate is being held down by medical technology. But we know we have children in middle school giving us Jonesboro like nothing in human history. We have children in high school giving us Columbine. And the two greatest high school massacres by a student in history were Germany, with 17 murdered in Erfurt, Germany, and 15 murdered in Witten, Germany. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Nations like European nations with draconian gun laws are victims of this every bit as much. It is not about what's in their hands, it's about what's in their head. In Belgium, we had a daycare massacre. On the anniversary of the death of the actor who played the Joker, this guy comes to a daycare center with orange hair and a butcher knife. He murdered one daycare worker in Belgium, he wounded another, and hacked and stabbed 12 little babies in the crib. That's what one sicko with a butcher knife did at a daycare center in Belgium. So the responsibility to take the precious lives of our lambs and to protect them is overwhelming. And we give this call to be the sheepdogs, to protect the Lord's flock. And we talk about how your body and mind are going to respond under stress, how this can turn into post-traumatic stress disorder, and how to prevent it. I am, praise God, our nation's #1 law enforcement trainer by every measure. I train every federal agency. I train cops in all 50 states. I train all of our military and all of our Tier 1 spec ops. And we're taking the same dynamic that I give to our elite military and law enforcement and make it available to God's sheepdogs to protect their flock.
Excellent. One of the things that I hear from pastors a lot, and also laymen, is, hey, you know what? God's going to protect us. We don't have to worry about anything. God will take care of us. And as a police officer, I know that's, I guess in the larger realm, that is very true. But I've seen too many good people hurt by bad people. And so how do you address that mentality?
And again, I try to use the analogy of the fire. God's going to protect us. So why do we have a fire exit? Why do we have a fire extinguisher? God will protect us from fire. We don't need a fire extinguisher. We don't need insurance. We don't need that particular thought line. When you apply it to any other field, is negligent. Well, God's going to protect us from lightning, so we don't need a lightning rod in the building. God's going to protect us from fire, so we don't need fire extinguishers. We don't need fire alarms. We don't need that first aid kit. God will protect us. This is negligent. Yeah. God protects our souls, and He's given us eternal security. But here on earth, we have the responsibility to have that fire exit and fire alarm. And to say God will protect us from fire and refuse to have a fire extinguisher on site is negligent. To say God will protect us from violence is equally negligent. Now, the reason why people will have a fire extinguisher but refuse to do anything about violence is because the threat of violence is so much more traumatic. And so the magnitude of denial is all the greater. What that means is when violence does happen, you are vastly more likely to be psychologically shattered. The DSM, the Bible of Psychiatry, Psychology, tells us whenever the cause of trauma is human in nature, the degree of trauma, the potential for post-traumatic stress response is all the greater. Fires, tornadoes, we don't take those personally. They happen, and we deal with them, we get on with life. When a human being inflicts that trauma upon us, then the psychological impact is vastly greater. And so when we fail to prepare for the thing most likely to kill people in our church, violence, not only have we made our church vulnerable physically, but we've made our people vulnerable psychologically. Not only will they be destroyed physically, but they'll be destroyed psychologically. And denial kills you twice. It kills you once because you don't prepare for violence, but it kills you twice. You know darn well, if somebody walked into your church and murdered a bunch of your precious flock, and you hadn't prepared for that possibility, you know darn well you'd live the rest of your life in hell. That's why we prepare for that possibility, because if we didn't, and the precious lambs entrusted to our care were harmed, when there's simple, straightforward things we could have done, like fire extinguishers and fire exits, and we don't do it and people die, we are negligent. You will be sued. You will be successfully sued, and you will live the rest of your life in hell.
You know, one of the things I've learned from you is if you fail to prepare or you believe that nothing bad can happen to you, and then all of a sudden something does happen to you, that occurrence of post-traumatic stress disorder is going to be even more intense.
Absolutely. The denial kills us twice, once physically and twice psychologically. You've left yourself so incredibly vulnerable. And so if we care about the individuals who worship in our house of worship, if we love the people we worship with, we'll be prepared to protect them physically and psychologically and financially. Because quite frankly, the possibility for a lawsuit is significant. And for that matter, professionally. If you fail to prepare for the possibility of violence and people die, you can be destroyed physically, psychologically, financially, and quite possibly professionally. We have the responsibility to protect our flock. The magistrate beareth not the sword in vain. One of the last things Jesus told his disciples, just shortly before he's arrested and crucified, was, I told you before, don't even take your cloak with you. Now I tell you, sell your cloak and buy a sword. The responsibility to protect our flock from fire, and the responsibility to protect our flock from lightning strike, and to protect them from violence is all the same. And yet when it comes to violence, the thing most likely to kill our flock, we're in the greatest level of denial.
So when people come to the conference on the Saturday that you're speaking, we know that Carl Chin and Jimmy Meeks will be speaking. I possibly might be speaking on Friday. What do you hope to gain after leaving and being done with your presentation? What do you hope to gain at the end of that presentation?
Yeah. First and foremost, you'll be given the tools to understand how to organize, how to prepare, the magnitude of the threat. And then you'll be given the tools to psychologically deal with it, to help people in their hour of greatest need, to know how the mind and body responds under stress, and how to prepare and survive physically, and how to prepare and survive psychologically and spiritually. To be given the spiritual foundation, understand the threat, and what it is that we need to do.
Well, I do appreciate your time, Dave. Just having you on our interview and on our website is a great honor to me. I've known about you since 1995 when I met you at the Ohio Police Officer Academy, and I've heard several of your talks since then. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks, Glenn. It's a privilege and an honor. Praise God for your ministry and what you're doing. May God bless you and yours as you have reached out and blessed so many in your ministry.
Thanks so much. I'll see you at the end of the month.